Hi, everybody. Welcome to Social 2 discussion. If you were assigned to the Friday section, hello, my name is Gray, and I'll be your TA for this quarter. Apologies that I had to cancel discussion this week. I am having a surgical procedure, but I promise that we'll be back in person by next week. So this is just a one-time kind of asynchronous situation. Thank you for kind of working with me on that. And I look forward to actually seeing you in person next week. And it will be at an SSPA 1165. And thanks again for your cooperation. But I didn't want to leave you completely hanging, so I'm just recording this short video, kind of introducing myself, going over expectations for grading for discussion. Finally, I will have a chance to talk a little bit about the Stiglitz and Sen readings, as well as the Chirico readings that we had for this week. Next, to share a little bit more about myself, again, my name is Gray, and you could just call me by my first name. I study social movements, and I'm originally from Pennsylvania. Um, my current paper that I'm working on is related to anti-Vietnam War campus protests, and the sort of obvious parallel to that is the more recent Gaza Solidarity encampment protests that we saw last year and this year. And one way that globalization kind of manifests in my work is that the students that I am studying lived in a pre-globalized society. So part of what that means is that there was less flow of people across borders. And so there weren't really very many international students that were protesting against the Vietnam War in the same way that now we have Palestinian students protesting the genocide. And so they did not have to deal with these same targeted deportations and kidnappings by ICE that you might have seen in the news in recent days. Um, besides social movements, I'm also interested in political economy, which is basically just how political interests shape the distribution of resources around the world. And also, I really enjoy movies. I recently saw Mickey 17, and it was really good. Highly recommend. And I also like hiking. This is a picture of Balmer Canyon, which is very close to where I live in graduate housing on campus. Also, I have a cat named Maisie. Okay, moving on to attendance policy, just explaining a bit about grading. So most of your discussion grade is just going to be showing up. Um, so yeah, 80% is attendance, and as a reminder, the discussion section is worth 20% of your overall grade in this class. For future reference, I take attendance at the end of class, so if you ever need to leave ahead of time, please let me know. Or if you know you're not going to be there, just send me an email if you have an extenuating circumstance. I will absolutely try to accommodate. And I'm not taking attendance this week, but after this week, I do allow one unexcused absence, and each additional unexcused absence will take points off of your final grade. The other components that contributes The other component of your discussion grade is just going to be this rough draft assignment. And this is really meant to take pressure. Um, the other component of your discussion grade is going to be this rough draft assignment. This is meant to be helpful for you. It'll give me a chance to give you some feedback and let you know if you're going in the right direction before you submit your final paper. I don't mean it to be a high stakes, stressful thing. It's supposed to be helpful for you. And this will be due sometime in week 7. I'll update you with the actual date. But yeah, that's basically the great breakdown of your discussion grade. Another thing I wanted to mention is the Google Classroom, which I kind of plugged in this announcement. Here, I will be posting slides and other things, and eventually this will be where you turn in your draft assignment. The final logistical thing that I wanted to cover is that my office hours start next week. So I will be holding them on Zoom on Thursdays from 10 to 11 a.m. However, if this time does not work for you, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm sure we can figure out a time to meet. My schedule is very flexible, so I'd be happy to meet by appointment as well. Okay, so let's dive into the material and review some of the big ideas that we've been talking about in lecture so far. You'll recall that the subjective definition of globalization is the sense that the world is becoming smaller. And objectively, this is the result of the increased ease and frequency of global flows. In class, we discussed all of the different things that can flow, such as like material commodities and cultural artifacts, but also less tangible things like culture, values, and traditions. So there are two broad reactions to this state of globalized affairs, one of which is cosmopolitanism, which is very much embracing the idea of being a world citizen. And on the other side of it is cultural protectionism, which is safeguarding tradition from the perceived negative impacts of globalization. We see this both on the right with the rise of white supremacist movements, but also you could put like indigenous struggles over land in this category as well. So it's not just a right-wing reactionary thing. And we'll see that particularly in next week's readings. And finally, I wanted to address anomie. This is a fancy word for the breakdown of social norms. And the way that our textbook kind of describes it is that globalization is a very rapid process producing very immense social change. And so values, norms, and ideas might become outdated before sufficiently strong new ones have emerged to take their place. So Durkheim originally was writing in the context of the transition from feudalism to capitalism, creating this sense of normlessness. And yeah, he was very concerned about the loss of one's social belonging. Um, Other kind of classic sociological ideas that Chirico talks about are alienation, which is Marx essentially just kind of a lack of freedom or connectedness to one's labor from other people and from yourself. Um, and with Weber, we have the idea of rationalization, society's increasing preference for efficiency, calculability, predictability. I believe your textbook touches on the idea of McDonaldization, just kind of everything being fully rationalized and standardized. And that's another idea that is going to resurface quite a bit in this class. Aside from anomie, this is a list of other terms that you should be familiar with, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but one other thing that I just wanted to emphasize is the idea of civil society organizations. Civil society is defined as voluntary associations outside of government or business. So because it's voluntary, it's also outside of the family. The textbook gives the example of Boy Scouts or student organizations, community groups, charities. All of these are part of civil society, which social scientists broadly, like sociologists, political scientists, and economists, all are in agreement that civil society is necessary for a functioning democracy. So it's going to come up a lot in this class. Okay, so finally, let's talk about Stiglitz and Sen. These are both economists who believe that globalization is not living up to its full potential and that major reforms are necessary to make sure that the benefits of globalization are distributed equally and that economic globalization, read neoliberalism, does not infringe upon national sovereignty or democracy. This is a very weird time to be revisiting these readings. As we mentioned, globalization is kind of in its death throes, but both of these scholars at the time that they were writing, both of these economists were very optimistic about globalization in general. However, they did have their criticisms. So, starting with Harvard economist Joseph Stiglitz, he is looking at global capitalism and with a particular focus on three institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. And he notes that in recent years, at least around the time that he was writing, the meetings of these bureaucracies have been rife with anti-globalization protests. And so part of what he does in this paper is he takes like a historical look at things and just says like, how did we get here? Why is globalization so unpopular now? So one of the things that he notes is that the IMF was originally founded after World War II as sort of like a Keynesian institution meant to provide loans to countries that were facing economic downturns. So Stiglitz points out that originally the IMF was founded on the idea that markets could be fallible and that collective action was necessary to prevent like them from kind of wreaking havoc. And he notes that in the 1980s, with the Washington Consensus, there was a major historical shift to like free market economics, where now the IMF, rather than being an institution based on the idea that markets are fallible, Stiglitz says that now it is basically just an institution based on market supremacy. And so, yeah, he thinks that a lot of its policies have been very destructive and certainly disruptive. In particular, he points to like the rapid marketization of the Soviet Union. So Stiglitz's problem with globalization at this time is that it is, in his words, global governance without global representation. So it's really negatively impacting the global south. And then Amartya Sen is also an economist concerned about the unequal distribution of the benefits of globalization. And yeah, he does concede, similar to Stiglitz, that globalization has improved the standard of living for many in the global south. However, he notes that that fact alone is not enough to dismiss arguments about the unequal distribution. He uses this analogy of women in the family to be akin to the global south in this like arrangement of globalization. It's not enough to say that women are better off like in families to that's not enough to dismiss the charge that the family gender arrangement is unequal. And we'll be talking about that more in lecture if that's confusing. But in any case, that's not enough to dismiss the charge that the family gender arrangement is unequal. And we'll be talking about that more in lecture if that's confusing. But in any case, both Sen and Stiglitz are very much in agreement that major reforms are necessary to make sure that the benefits of globalization are being equally distributed. All right, thank you so much for watching this. Please, if you have any questions, email me and I will respond to you as soon as I can. I am really looking forward to seeing you all next week. Have a good one.